My brothers and sisters used to mock me like, hey, Russell, you a millionaire yet? You a millionaire yet? And now they work for me, which is pretty cool. So,
What is a big mistake that you've made if you're looking back, or a big regret that you have that taught you a valuable lesson?
oh man, question for me, how do I have it all? How can I be a great entrepreneur and a husband and a father? And it's usually you have to sacrifice something, right? And I see it all the time where people they start being really successful, they become so successful at great, and then they lose their wife and kids. It's like you lost the thing that you were fighting for.
Can you define the word love?
Oh man.
A few weeks ago, I interviewed 44-year-old self-made millionaire Russell Brunson, who for a lot of reasons has figured life out, but is also still trying to navigate it. Russell is one of the most successful marketers of all time. He sold hundreds of thousands of copies of his books and co-founded the $100 million software company called Clickfunnels. Russell gets paid $100,000 a day to consult with some of the top businesses in the world. Now today, with questions unlike any interview he has ever done, I am sharing the extended conversation of his greatest life lessons and experiences that I guarantee will change the way you think about life. How old are you?
I am 44.
What does it feel like to be 44?
I think you feel the same age all the time. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't feel any different than when I was 20. So everyone else seems like getting younger around me, but I feel about the same, yeah.
I would say a lot of people in their 40s, just from my experience, feel it. They feel the 40s. What have you done in your life to maybe feel this way, like you're still in your 20s?
I think a big part I just love what I do. You know what I mean? It's so much fun. I think a lot of people, they wake up every day and they're miserable. They don't like their job or their whatever they're doing, where it's like we wake up every day and we get to do the cool stuff. And so every day is like a fun adventure, and it's always a new exciting thing every single day, you know. It makes it fun.
I know a lot of people speak to you and they talk about your successes. I want to start this off by asking about the opposite. What is a failure that you have experienced that defined your life at the time?
The first time I think I really felt failure that was really painful for me was my junior year in high school. I was a wrestler growing up, and I always wanted to be a state champ. And like I remember after my sophomore year, I told everyone, be state champ. And I killed myself all year, every single day. And I remember the very first match of my junior year, wrestled the match, and I lost to him pretty badly. And it was just like, I don't know, it was humiliating first off. I remember going to school the next day, and like everyone's like, how'd it go? I'm like, oh, I lost. Like, oh, I thought you were gonna be a state champ. I thought you were, you know, and like that was probably one of the ones that was hardest for me, just because I'd built up my head and I told everyone around me, which is something I don't do very often anymore, because you know, after having that, yeah, and then having that failure. But it also was like, it was the key. Most failures are like the key to actual success long term too. You know what I mean?
If you're reflecting on it, what's the takeaway from there?
The next morning I woke up and I was like depressed and sad. I didn't want to, you know, I just wanted to feel bad. It feels good to feel bad sometimes, you know? And I remember my dad, he'd spent all night like watching the footage of the thing, and he watched it like, I don't know, maybe 100 times. Like he hadn't slept that night. I wake up the next morning and about to leave school, and my dad's like, hey, I know what he did to you. Come over here on the carpet. I'm like, Dad, I don't want to, you know? And he like sat there and made me drill this thing with him. And I was like so annoyed. And every morning and every night for the next 4 months of the wrestling season, we practiced that move, the move that I lost to over and over and over again. And 4 months later, I go to the state tournament, and I'm on one side of the bracket, that guy's on the other side of the bracket. We go all the way down to the state finals. We wrestled each other. Went out there on the match with him, and then wrestled him and ended up beating him at the state tournament. And for me, like the lesson that I learned was just like, if you fail, you're not a failure. And this is why most people I work with that struggle is like they're so scared to try that if they fail, they're going to be a failure. Whereas what I learned is like, when you fail, like it gives you all of the information you need to fix it, right? Like my dad saw like, this is what you did wrong. Let's just fix it. Your hip's in the wrong spot. You're leading your leg too far. Like we just like found those things, we drilled them, and like, and those weaknesses became strengths. For me, like that's served my whole life. Like every business we launch, every wrestling match afterwards, like we lose, it's like, cool, now I know what we did wrong. How do we iterate? How do we fix, you know? And that's like been one of the greatest life lessons for me ever. I think a big part of it is just, it's trial and error always, you know? And I think so many people they're so afraid of failing that they never try, versus like, let's fail and see what happens. Then we can try again. And it's being willing to keep stepping back up. Most people quit before you were like 3 inches from gold, and you're just like, this didn't work, I'm out.
For people who don't know you, what do we need to know about how you grew up, about your childhood, to understand the person that you are today?
Yeah, I grew up with a dad who was entrepreneurial. He was always hustling, trying little jobs and projects and stuff. And I started going to the grocery store with my mom, and I remember there's a magazine called Small Biz Op magazine. They still sell it today. It's like little cartoon characters all over it. And I bought it, and you open it up and you read it, there's it's like 140 pages of ads and 4 articles. It's just mostly all ads, and every ad is selling a different business opportunity. And so I would call every single one of the ads and I'd ask or request their free info kits, which I know at the time is just a sales letter. These big long sales letters, they'd show up, I'd sit there, I would read it and so excited. And so that's what I was doing when I was 13 years old, and it's got my brain, like I tell people, like I was ruined after that. Like I could never have a job. So I'm like, we could just place this ad in different newspapers. We could, just all the different things.
What did people say about you when you were talking about this stuff?
Well, I wasn't smart enough to like keep it to myself. So I tell everyone, I'm like, this isn't like, I'm gonna be a millionaire. So I tell my dad, I tell my mom, I tell my brothers and sisters. And it's funny because my brothers and sisters used to mock me like, hey, Russell, you a millionaire yet? You a millionaire yet? And now they work for me, which is pretty cool. So, but it was the thing, like that was the thing that like got me into it, was just like that belief. I just believed it would work because I saw it,
What are some sacrifices that you've had to make along the journey? I mean, a lot of people know how successful you are, you know how successful you are, but there's a lot that goes behind the scenes that people don't see. What are some sacrifices that it has taken for you to get to this point?
I'm at the office most times till 4 or 5 in the morning, coming home, sleeping a couple hours, going back and forth. And it's tough because I've got 5 kids, I've got a wife. And so a lot of it is like the sacrifice of time from them, which is hard. Because like I can sacrifice, like I'm a wrestler, I'm used to like beating myself up and starving, cutting weight. But it's harder is like when you're away, it's a sacrifice for them. And so that's been the harder thing for me, is like, how do I balance that sacrifice, right? Where it's like, I need to be a present dad, a present father. So it's like in the morning time before school, I got to be there with him. When they home school, I got to be there with him. But if I'm gonna be a present dad and I have to go and change the world, it's like I gotta work hard during the day, and then when they go to bed at night, I gotta work hard into the night so I can do all the things, right? The question for me is, how do I have it all? How can I be a great entrepreneur and a husband and a father and someone who has spirituality in my life? How do I do all those different things? And it's usually you have to sacrifice something, right? And
what's your advice to someone going through that? Like that's a very real problem for any parent. I would say any parent or any high achiever who wants to have a family and a life and all that.
Everything really great in my life came during times of radical imbalance. And I think about like when I was wrestling and I wanted to be a great wrestler, like my life was radically imbalanced. Like I barely graduated from school because I can't do school and have a job and be a great wrestler. All my focus goes here and the least amount of effort goes here and here, right? When I met my wife, same thing. It's like I got radically balanced towards her. That's how we created a great relationship initially. All my free time, all my energy, all my everything was there. We have kids, the same thing. When I started the business, we launched Clickfunnels. Like we were radically imbalanced for a long period of time trying to get things off but it's just coming back to like understanding that if you do it for too long, it'll destroy everything else, right? And that's the hard thing that a lot of people aren't able to juggle. And I see it all the time where people they start being really successful and they're doing it initially because I want to create this life for my wife and my kids. They become so successful to create, and then they lose their wife and the kids. It's like you lost the thing that you were fighting for. And so for me, it's like being aware of that, like, okay, radical imbalance, we're doing this thing, but getting everyone on board. Like Colette, my wife, like for the next 2 weeks, an event, I got to kill myself. When it's done, we're going to go take a week off and go do this. Or when we're done, we're going to do this. And like everybody knows. And then they're all part of the same team. And then it's like, hey, I'm going to war. We go to war, do the thing. But then it's like coming back so you don't lose the reason why you're doing it. I think that's the tragedy of entrepreneurship so many times, is you see people who lose the thing they were trying to create this whole thing for in the beginning.
Do you ever, I see like in your eyes and your face as you're speaking, like you're moving at 100 miles an hour. Do you do anything to ever slow down?
I had 2 friends yesterday ask me, did you meditate? I probably should.
Well, you already know you're one of the best marketers ever. People pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars just to give them advice and tweak their businesses. So you've come across tons of businesses in your life. In your opinion, what differentiates a great one that you think can last and can succeed versus one that might not?
There's a lot of little things that matter. The mistake a lot of entrepreneurs make initially is that they're obsessed with like the product they're creating as opposed to like who's the customer they're serving, right? Like that was my biggest mistake initially. Is I was so focused on these products I was creating, trying to sell them. I wasn't thinking about them. And so because of that, there were a lot of hits and misses and things like that. And when I shifted my focus to like, okay, here's the people I'm serving, and then listening to them, like, what are they looking for? What are they struggling with? Like all of our best ideas came from that. Like Clickfunnels came from, we were serving entrepreneurs and they were struggling and like, we can't figure out how to do these things. Like let's build software, makes it easier. And it comes from like focusing on the customer, not on the product. Like,
so you find that a lot, I guess, when you're talking to people, when you're just looking at things, it's focused on the product and not the actual person.
And you can tell because people come with me, like they'll join our coaching program, like, hey, dude, check out my product. I'm like, and they're so excited. And I'm like, so who are you serving? I'm like, what do you mean? Like they don't know the answer. Versus someone that comes to me and they come to me like, hey, I'm the best in the world at whatever. Like, this is who I serve, this is who I'm obsessed with. Like, how do we grow a business? Like, that's such an easier thing to help with. Like, oh, cool. We know who your dream customers are. You know who you're passionate about serving. Like, that's the right way to look at it, which is backwards from, I think, how most business teach. You know, like, you look at what they teach in business school and stuff. It's the opposite of that. So
I went to business school. I agree. Didn't teach me much.
it's funny. Somebody asked me one time, they asked me, like, do you have an MBA? And I laughed. At the time, I had 2 that were working for me, and we fired them both because they were horrible. I'm like, no, like, why would I have an MBA? So no.
If I'm sitting here and I'm at a crossroads in my life, I'm feeling stuck in my life, and I'm asking myself, like, I want to start a business. I want to change my life. I want to get going. How would you recommend someone navigate that to go from maybe where they are right now that they're not thrilled about to where they want to be?
The first thing I would focus on is just, it's looking where you are right now. And this is what's so hard for most people, is every single person on this earth has certain gifts they've been given, right? And the problem is that whatever our gifts are, because we're good at them, most people understand, like, that's a superpower. And so they discount their superpower. Like, for example, for me, someone comes to me and, like, they show me their business. I'm like, oh, this is the funnel. This is what I would do. And, like, I just know it because I've done it for 2 decades. Like, it's like second nature to me. And other people are like, how do you know, like, what do I do, right? And they'll literally pay $100,000 a day to come out and have me map out a funnel for them. Like, this is insane. I'm like, this is so simple. How in the world, you know? So whatever your superpower is,
You'll take it though.
yeah. As long as the check cashes, I will take it. Yeah. But that's the problem, is that whatever our superpower is, we underestimate it because it's not that big to us. So it's like, first off, understand, like, what is your superpower? A lot of times you have to ask somebody else, like, what would you say my superpower is? Like, my wife is the nicest person ever. But for her, she, like, in her head, she thinks she's so mean. I'm like, what are you talking about? You're like the nicest person I've ever met in my entire, you're like, that's her superpower. A lot of times it's easier for other people to tell you. That's number one. Number two then is realizing that, like I talked about earlier, dream customer, like, who's your dream customer, right? Typically your dream customer is you 5 years ago, right? Like, every single person, like you or me, who we went through, like, we had successes and failures and trials, all sorts of stuff that made us become who we are, who we, like, figured our superpower. And now, like, what we're selling is us 5 years ago. Like based on what you've learned and discovered who you become, you're going back in time and, like, finding people who were just like you were struggling, because now you know the blueprint and the plan. And, like, that's the key. And so, yeah, those are the things I look at.
It's the start of a new year, and if you are unsatisfied with your current life and want to take it to the next level, we have built a fully guided goal-setting journal based on over 1,000 interviews with some of the highest achievers like Russell that has helped thousands of people in our audience transform their lives. In just 3 parts, this journal will help you figure out your ideal life, turn that into specific, achievable, measurable goals, and then create a disciplined structure to track your progress over 6 months until your biggest dreams become your current reality. Click the link below to learn more.
I would say, obviously, business and sales, such an important part, but life and sales, like, the sales tactics you could build for business are very similar in life. If you're in a relationship, if you're meeting people, you want to make friends, you want people to like you, that kind of thing. How would you recommend that someone be better at selling themselves, just as a person, unrelated to business?
It's funny, in my books, I talk about this concept called the attractive character, which is, like, the persona that you create for yourself. It's not that it's a fake persona, but it's like, what are the things that you're going to put out there for people to connect with, right? And what the problem most people have is that they want to posture themselves in a way because they look good to everybody. It's like posture, and they come out there. And the problem is, like, when you posture, there's no connection. And it's funny, I study comic books because it's fascinating to look at what things happen, right? Like, characters have a lot of flaws, and the ones that we like the most, right? Like Superman, this flawless character. And, like, when they first started writing comic books about him, like, nobody cared. Like, this guy can't die, he can't, you know, until they introduced kryptonite. They introduced kryptonite, and, like, oh, there's a weakness, and now he becomes an interesting character. And so for us, it's like, one of the things, like, when you're sharing with your audience, if you are this perfect, polished person all the time, they will not connect with you, they won't like you. Instead, it's like breaking that down and, like, sharing your kryptonite, sharing what you're struggling with. Like, those are the pieces where then people build connection with you, right? And so when I'm talking about, like, building attractive character, it's like, here are the things I stand for, but here are my character flaws. Here's what I struggle with. Here's what I, you know, and so, like, you're sharing these different things with people, and that's how you bring the connection. People actually start following you and connecting with you, you know? I think that's one of the biggest things people, they struggle with, is they don't want to become vulnerable. It's like, that vulnerability is what draws people to you. And that's kind of key.
Let's say I'm trying to meet somebody, like, in the dating scene, or I'm going to, like, a conference, and I want to make good connections, but I don't want to come off as a weird person. What is it that makes someone rub you the right way and the wrong way? You get what I'm saying? Let's stick on the topic here, yeah?
So the thing that was hardest for me is like when you tell someone's coming up to you because they're going to pitch you something and you can feel they're coming and they're asking you questions. You can tell they're asking questions to try to figure out how to like make a thing. When I started going to events and stuff, meeting people, I hated that feeling when people were like trying to get something from me. So I was like, I'm going to come and I'm not going to ask anybody for it. I'm not bringing business cards. I'm not trying to pitch them on anything. I just want to like get to know some people. So Tony Robbins and I have had a great relationship for almost 16, 17 years. But for the first decade, I spent 10 years literally just showing up, helping him, helping his team, serving his team, like never asked for anything, never wanted anything. A decade later, my Expert Secrets book came out and I was like, that was the one, like, if I could get Tony. So I remember I paid for him to come to our event, hang out a little bit, and I was like, hey man, you'd be willing to interview me on your page about the book? And he's like, I'd love to. I'm like, but I fed that relationship for a decade before I ever asked anything. And I did, he's like, oh, that'd be awesome. You know, we became business partners in the business later, and a whole bunch of other stuff that came from that. But it was, if I would have, first time I met Tony, he's like, okay, how do I get this? He gets hit more than anybody. He would have known. But I showed up consistently for a decade, you know? So a lot of times it's like, we're looking for this like short-term hit, and it's like, man, that's good, but those who play the long game win this game. You know what I mean? Like,
the lesson I'm taking here is be authentic. Even though you may want something down the line, don't lead with that. Don't think about it. Just try to be yourself and make meaningful connections.
yeah, for sure.
You've been with your wife how long?
22 years we're married.
What has been a secret for you guys to have the love and the relationship that you do? Because I know a lot of people go through marriages that fail. A lot of people go through relationships that don't work out. People are desperately trying to find real love. So for you, it seems like you found it. What do you think is your guys' secret?
I think that marriage is hard. I'm not sure if you're married or not, but marriage is hard, the ups and downs. And so it's not like it's an easy thing. I think part of it though is like when we got married, we committed to each other. Like we're not allowed to say the D word. Like that's like a law from day one. Like we don't say that word. Divorce is the word. But like you'll bring it up.
You saw
like, as soon as you bring it up, now there's an option, right? We committed to this and this is the thing we're doing. And the commitment was a big part ahead of time. I think one thing we're really good at is that like I allow her to be her and she allows me to be me. I think a lot of marriages you see where people are, they can't be happy by themselves, right? Like my wife was older when we got married. She was 28. I was 22. But we were both happy people by ourselves. I can be me, she can be her, we can be together, and like all those things are great. A lot of times people get into marriages or get into relationships because like they feel broken, like this person's gonna fix me, and then you're like, you know what I mean? It's like a lot of it's that, and I think a lot of it's just learning how to pick the right person. Like I was lucky enough to pick someone who has the same values as me and same goals as me, and then other than that, it's a lot of work. Because it's not, at least for me, it hasn't been, or her, she says like marriage has been hard. Like it has, it's really hard.
I think everyone agrees, yeah.
Yeah, but we keep showing up for each other, and 22 years later, five kids and a whole bunch of insanity. Like we're still here and love each other, and it's great.
In your opinion, can you define the word love for me?
Oh man, oh man. By default, humans are very self-interested, right? Like, not selfish, but like we do things for ourselves. I think love is when you're willing to like take the light off of you and put it towards someone else. And for most people, like you grow up, and for the most part, as kids, like kids are the most selfish people ever, right? They only care about themselves, and then you become like teenagers, and it gets even worse. Then you like, and there's comes this time where all of a sudden like you find the person, and you're like, oh my gosh, I care more about that person than myself. And that's when all of a sudden it's like this relationship happens. Where you stop caring, and then that's when marriage happens. Then all of a sudden you have kids, and also it's not like that's not me and her. Now it's like me and her and them, and then all of a sudden you shift, and it's like that's more important than me, you know. So it's like when you start taking away from yourself and giving to somebody else, like that's when love.
Yeah,
I don't know how to explain it, but that's you know, for me.
I love that. What is a truth that you've learned about life that you wish more people understood?
Always do more than you're paid for, and eventually get paid for more than what you're doing, right? In my world, the word we use is over-delivering. How do you over-deliver? And I think about this, like, in every situation I'm in, like with my wife, with my kids, with my employees, with my customers, if my goal is always to over-deliver in every situation, right? Like, that's the principle, right? And I think about, like, when you see marriages just fall apart or relationships break, it's because someone's like they're taking more than they're giving. It's like, how do I show up in a situation like, hey, my job, I got to over-deliver in this situation. I'm going to pour more into them no matter what. You know, like that's the principle. And like, you don't see marriages fall apart where someone's showing up and over-delivering to that person. You know, you don't see relationships break. You don't see businesses fall. Like, if you're showing consistently over-delivering for your customers, like they're going to keep coming back. Like, this is insane. Like, I've been in this business now for 20 years, I think. And in 20 years, in the market that I serve, the ones who have lasted the test of time are the ones who show up and they over-deliver in every situation. Every interview, every video, every event, every product, that's the common ground of like longevity, of being perennial, not just, someone who makes a little money in the short term. And same thing is true again in relationships and marriages and in business. It's just like how to over-deliver in every situation. And so I think that's the principle that like I wish I would have understood earlier, because there were definitely things when I got started in relationships that broke that I didn't understand, that where I was like, what am I going to get in here? What am I going to get? It's like, no, show up and over-deliver, and then everything will take care of itself,
Yeah, I love that. If you could go back in time to your, let's say, 25-year-old self, knowing what you know today, and just give him one piece of advice, maybe one piece of advice to get where you are today, but faster, what would you say?
I would have tried to assemble a team faster. Like for a decade, I was like a solo dude. I had people that worked for me, but it wasn't like strategically picking a team. Like, I don't know, I love superhero movies. Like, who is the dream team I got to be able to do this? I'd find the people, assemble them, and now it's like, now let's go take over the world.
Nice. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it. That was awesome.
Thank you so much for watching. Russell not only became a self-made millionaire, but he's also taught thousands of people how to replicate his process of selling online, which has resulted in them becoming millionaires as well. If you're interested in learning from Russell, he has a new 3-day challenge that teaches the A to Z of selling anything online. Simply just go to sellingonline.com/Sprouht to check it out. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.